This lens is what Micro Four Thirds is all about. The Panasonic Leica 9mm f1.7 is small, light, and optically great. Coming in at only 130 grams, it's a no-brainer for travel photography or videography. This 30-second sample reel was shot using the 9mm on my GH6 and the Ronin S gimbal. This is the most fun I've had shooting Micro Four Thirds in a while. I hope you like this video. Let's take a quick look at this sample reel. Welcome to the channel, folks. My name's Shane. In today's video, we're checking out the Panasonic Leica DG Summilux 9mm f1.7 Prime. This came out about a year or so before posting this particular review, and it's one of the latest Micro Four Thirds lenses, along with the version 3 of their classic 12 to 35mm f2.8. This super wide 9mm field of view gives us the equivalent of an 18mm in full frame terms while keeping the size and weight down compared to most full frame alternatives. Before we get going, a huge thank you to Panasonic for the loan of this lens. I don't get to keep it, no money's changed hands, and all thoughts about this lens are my own. If you want to check it out, I'll link it down in the description box below. Here we go. To kick things off, let's take a look at the 9mm field of view when you compare it up against the 12 to 35mm f2.8 at 12mm. Here we have the 12mm f2.8 on a tripod. As you can see, Rhiannon is framed directly in the center. You can just see the second tree on the right and just a little bit of grass on the left of screen. Now over to the 9mm f1.7. Not only is there some really nice looking subject separation, but we can now see a lot more on the right of frame and way more grass on the left. The field of view is wide and distortion free thanks to the rectilinear lens design. Here's both the 12mm f2.8 field of view versus the 9mm field of view side by side, so you can get a good sense of how much wider the 9mm is. Not only is there a big difference in the field of view, but you can also see how much more contrast this Panasonic Leica lens has. Let's take a look at the Panasonic Leica 9mm f1.7 for continuous autofocus performance with video. All of these samples were shot in the PAL frame rate of 25 frames per second on the GH6. This first test was at f1.7 using the One Area Plus mode with body detection on and no custom settings. Looking at the performance, it did quite well. It did take a moment to catch up to Rhiannon as she got up close, but the transition was smooth. I would consider this completely usable. The second autofocus test was the full area with body detection mode on. This performed quite well at f1.7, and it's a good choice for letting the camera do the work if you don't want to use a zone mode. I then bumped up the autofocus speed +2, and while the autofocus was faster, it was at the expense of more pulsing. Start with the AF settings at default and you should get the best results with minimal issues. You can see with the +2, the background was fluttering quite a bit, so avoid setting the speed too high. If you plan on shooting at 100 or 120 frames per second, use the One Area mode as it performs quite well. There are occasions where the AF would jitter here and there, but I found it to perform better than expected. When Panasonic eventually release a phase detection Micro Four Thirds camera, if it does happen, this 9mm will perform even better than you've seen on this video. Of course, with the contrast DFD being the limitation. The motors in this 9mm are fast and snappy, and I can't wait to see how it performs on a future camera. If you plan on taking photos, adjusting focus between minimum and infinity is quick and responsive thanks to the high-speed motors. Let's talk about focus breathing, or the lack thereof. This lens exhibits some of the least amount of focus breathing I've ever seen. Pulling focus manually from the background to the foreground, the frame barely moves whatsoever. Low focus breathing is what you want when shooting video, as the frame won't be zooming in and out, becoming distracting. The minimum focusing distance of this lens is rated at 9.5 centimeters. You're able to get some amazing close-up photography. Even at f1.7, the image is still nice and sharp. Let's cover handheld video performance and stabilization. Pairing this 9mm f1.7 with the GH6 allowed me to get some really great results. In this sample clip, I'm walking backward. While I was struggling to keep balanced on this structure, the end result was still quite good with only minimal warping in the corners. When it came to vlogging, 9mm is a great field of view, but you will see some notable warping in the corners of frame. This could also be dependent on your technique, so my vlogging skills are not really that great. Comparing the 9mm to the 12-35mm version 2, the stabilization of the 12mm is better, but the image quality on the 9mm is better. The 9mm has a really premium look to it, and again, the subject separation looks great. You are going to get more stable results with the 12-35mm f2.8 thanks to that optical image stabilization. If you don't plan on doing a lot of walking and talking, the 9mm will still be a great choice, but I did notice some warping in the corners. Gimbal shooters will love this 9mm field of view for capturing a scene. This lens is made for wide follow shots or capturing a unique perspective when you compare it up against the 12-35, for example. This wider field of view paired with the GH6 is a lot of fun, and I love the results when shooting in 4K at 120 frames per second. When it comes to sunstars, I was quite impressed at what I was able to achieve by stopping down. The sunstars on the most part look sharp and clear to my eye. This 9mm is susceptible to flaring, but the times where it did flare, I think it looked kind of cool. This was evident when shooting close up on reflective surfaces and also when shooting almost directly into the sun. In these type of situations though, most lenses would flare to some extent, and overall it wasn't a problem. The great news was I didn't notice a lack of contrast in those type of situations. Let's cover build quality, size and weight. I'm very impressed at how this lens feels in the hand. It's very comparable size-wise to the 25mm f1.7 prime, and it's built almost identically on the surface, but in the hand, this 9mm does feel more premium. We get a much more fluid focus ring experience, and the plastic feels higher quality. While the exterior of this lens is plastic, we still get a full dust, splash, and freeze resistant design, making it a good all-rounder for challenging shooting environments. Additionally, this lens only weighs 130 grams, and we get a 55mm filter thread. It does come with a nice plastic hood, but this was a sample unit, so I can't show you that. It didn't come in the box on loan. While this 9mm is built completely different to the 15mm f1.7, I would love to see Panasonic re-release some of their older lenses with this exact body and design. That way you would get a consistent lineup of lenses for micro four thirds, much like how the S series of primes works for their full frame system. Let's wrap this video up. I'm gonna give you my final thoughts on the Panasonic Leica 9mm lens. This is a great choice for someone wanting a super wide field of view with excellent optical performance. I can see this lens being used for video, gimbal use, travel photography, or anytime where you need a super wide field of view without that annoying fisheye look. While there's no bells and whistles on this 9mm prime, it's been a lot of fun to use, and the end result hopefully speaks for itself. I'm a big fan. If you want to check this out, I'll link it down in the description box below. And if you want to see more micro four thirds reviews, please leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. If you like what I do, it's always appreciated. Subscribe, click the bell, and I'll catch you soon. See ya.